A fixer-upper can be a rewarding experience. However, it takes a lot of planning, budgeting, and dedication. I'm Lauren. This is Raul. We are with the Schrader Group, and today we are going to be talking about fixer-uppers, whether you are wanting to buy it as your family home, resell, or rent it. So let's talk about the steps of fixer-uppers.
Yeah, so there's a lot of steps. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not getting too far ahead of yourself, if you will, right? First and foremost, you got to make sure you have enough capital, because I think at the end of the day, you got to figure out how you're going to finance it. But really figure out what your end goal is, right? Are we looking at just a cosmetic, a little paint, maybe some granites, change out the floors? Are we talking about a room addition? Are we talking about, some other options, moving a wall, things like that, right? Because I think once we look at what exactly our end goal is, how much do we want to put into it? How much dedication do we want to do? And when I say that, I mean sweat equity, right? You're actually out there doing stuff every weekend, trying to get that house ready to go. But at the end of the day, you want to find out what your ARV is, right? Your after repair value, and try to get all that plugged into play.
What would you say is the first step when looking to purchase a fixer-upper?
I think for me, the first step is finding the target market. And what I mean by that is actually doing a search and trying to figure out exactly what area we want to be in, not just, relative to where you live or where you work, but just in general to what your end goal is. Are we looking to make a profit? Are we looking to maximize? Are we looking to do like an Airbnb, a rental kind of situation? But I would also always do a market analysis just to make sure you're not overbuying, because you might buy a house that sounds like a really, really good deal,
right,
but then you have another 40 grand or 50 grand you have to put on top of it. So if things change, the market changes, you have to, life changes, you have to get out of it. At least have enough wiggle room or cushion, that way you're able to exit like an exit strategy, right? Just in case you have to turn, you can leave and still have a little money built up, but at the same time not get burned.
So what should you consider when looking to purchase and resell a fixer-upper?
For me personally, what I want to look at is your street, right? The street that you're buying, because even though the number and the math makes sense, if your neighbors to the left or the neighbors to the right are, in shambles, or there's 12 cars outside that looks like it's a mechanic yard, I mean, it's going to be really tough, right? If you wanted to resell, if you wanted to rent, things like that. You also want to look at proximity. You want to make sure you're close to a school, close to kind of amenities, things like that, because I think in the rental market, people want to be in proximity to what they do on a normal basis. Now, if you're looking at flip it, sell it, right? I would say you want to get into something that's comfortable. Right now, our market's kind of unique, and right now what we're seeing is the pockets between 350 to 550 are really taking a hit right now, because a lot of people are just kind of waiting on the sidelines. But I would say anywhere below 350 would be a good target market, if you will. But also limiting how much money you're going to put into it. So it just really depends.
So that kind of leads into my next question. What would you say is the general rule of thumb of when you're purchasing and how much to put into it?
Yeah, so most investors are going to look at it in a form of a 70% loan to value, and most money lenders and things like that will do the same. And what that means is, for easy math, let's just use 100 grand, right? So that means that the bank, the lender, whatever it's going to be, is only going to lend up to 70%. So they're going to give you 70 grand off of that 100,000 after repair value. Now, you're going to have to acquire the property and do the repairs for that 70K, which means you're probably going to buy the house 50 grand and put 20K into it, which gives you that 70%. Now you multiply it up to 300 grand. Well, now you got a little bit more. You got up to 210 to do that. So you acquire for 150, you put 60 grand into it, you still have that 30% margin. That's normally a really good rule of thumb, just in case the market turns.
Yes, absolutely, because as we know, it's always changing.
Yeah, and you got to look at the demographics as well, because, I mean, when we look at a 7.5 interest rate versus a 6 or something like that, it changes. So we want to make sure that the math makes sense for the neighborhood that you're buying in,
right,
because no one wants to buy a mortgage that's $3 grand in a neighborhood that's really going for $12, $15, even $2,000.
Right. And so is there anything that you would do different if you're wanting to fix it and then resell it versus fix it up and then rent it out?
Yeah, so it depends, right? If you're going to do a fix and flip, then obviously you want that margin, that built in. You're going to do all the cosmetic wows that makes sense. If you're going to do a rental or like an Airbnb, I think the best rule of thumb is the 1% rule, which is basically whatever you put into the house, you get at least 1% back on your monthly rent. Unfortunately, sometimes that's hard. In our market's a little bit hard. So let's just say we buy a $250,000 house and we want $2,500 for the mortgage, right? that might be kind of tough, because if we're going to get that monthly rate, which we would consider our mortgage, or what we're paying is what we want to receive from the rental, it might be a little bit tough right now if you're going to go in at a higher interest rate. So maybe a 1.5% might be a decent return, maybe even a 0.75. It just really depends on where you're at and what you're trying to what's your goal, right? Do you want to hold it for 5 years? Do you want to hold it for 10 years? But we all realize that accumulation of equity happens year over year. And in San Antonio, we're at about a 6% yield for roll value every year. So it's one of those things, is it a buy and hold, or is it a buy and flip strategy?
Right. And then what if you want to make it your home? That could be fun.
Oh, it depends. It depends if you're designing or if I'm designing it. But if you want to make it your home, I mean, you're really just looking at something that's going to make sense. You could probably put a little bit more money into it, knowing that you're going to be there, paying the mortgage, paying down your note every month. But I would definitely still have that criteria in case something happens. You didn't put too much into the house to where you won't get that back in return.
And how long would you say that normally all takes to flip a home?
It depends, right? If we're doing cosmetic, you could probably be in there for 60 to 90 days. If you're doing, modifications, walls, extra bathrooms, you're going to the city pulling permits, all that kind of good stuff, that could take a little bit longer. Because if you're going to mess with any plumbing, electrical, you got to get permits. Right. If you're going to mess with any structural, you're going to have to get permits. Things like that. So it just really depends if you're doing a full remodel or if you're doing more of a cosmetic kind of paint, floors, things like that.
Okay. So big question. How can the Schrader Group help someone that's maybe looking into, getting into FixerUppers?
Well, the easiest way that we can help you out is we could give you a market analysis of what's happening in the area. A lot of times I get the question, hey, I found this house. It's my cousin's. He's trying to get rid of it. What do you think? I run the market not only for what's for sale and what the market's yielding on the comparable market analysis, but also what the rental rates are going. Because right now we're in that weird spot in our timeline, I guess you could say, here in San Antonio, that sometimes it makes sense to hold it to get into the next year and then sell it, but at least cover your bottom line. That way you're not losing money. Because right now we've seen prices come down a little bit, but I think at the very end of the day, sometimes we're having conversations with our clients like, hey, your house is worth $350 all day long, but right now the market's saying it's $325 or whatnot. So sometimes they're like, let's just rent it, get into 2024, and then we'll talk about selling it. And sometimes that's what the solution is.
Yeah, wow. That's a lot of good information. It can be a lot of fun. A lot goes into it, as you can see, whether dedication, the budgeting, the planning, everything. If y'all have any questions, please reach out, get with a professional.
It's been a blast. I hope you are doing well. I hope all your families are great. Have a blessed day, and we'll talk to y'all soon.